Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Grierson. I am a contributing editor at Backstage Magazine and a film critic for Screen International, Deadspin, and Paste Magazine. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone to this evening's screening of 2-Bit Waltz. Enough of me talking. Let's introduce the writer, director, star of this film. It's her directorial debut, Miss Clara Mamet.
Hello.
So backstage, we were talking a little bit, Clara, about the fact that you haven't actually watched this film in quite some time. When was the last time that you actually saw it from beginning to end?
Well, let's see. We finished it, I think I had just turned 19, and I just turned 20, so a year. That's math. That's good math, right?
That is correct math, yes.
Yeah, it's been a year. It's kind of weird.
And this is your first film that you've written and directed, but you have written and starred in things before. But I'm curious, when you were younger, when you were sort of starting out, did you think of yourself first as I want to be an actress, or I wanted to be a writer, or did you always think of them as things tied together for what you wanted to do?
I didn't really have any direction. I just thought I was a fucking star. I was like, I'm a star, man. I'm going to do big things. But I didn't actually have any direction or discipline, or I didn't do any work. I was just like 14. And like, I'm going to be the star of the musical.
And did you start writing things when you were 14, or how did that? Because sometimes people, if they want to be in a project that they really like, they write something for themselves. Was that sort of the early process for you?
Yeah, the reason I made 2-Bit, started making things in general, is because I wanted a movie to star in. But nobody knew who I was, so I thought I'd just do it myself. Yeah, the first thing I wrote, I think I was 16. I wrote a play that I did with John Pericello, who plays the therapist in this. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was the first thing I wrote.
And was that, because you did 2 plays in Santa Monica a couple years ago, was that one of the plays, or was this something earlier than that?
No, that was that.
Okay.
In this like teeny tiny little airport theater, we did these.
And because it was Paris and then
this play called the
Solvit Kids,
yeah,
right?
This like goofy play that I wrote with this kid named Jack, who I met at theater camp. Yeah, it was fun. It was good.
And Paris, I didn't see either of the plays, unfortunately, but my understanding is that Paris was more autobiographical. It was based on experiences you had, where Solvit Kids was more just a fun project that the two of you worked on together. Is that accurate? What were those 2 plays? Because they were one-act plays, both of these, correct?
Yeah, that's accurate.
When you were doing things early, and one of them is more autobiographical and the other one wasn't so autobiographical, was one easier to write than the other?
Well, yeah, writing about yourself is always easier. It kind of feels like cheating. And, it's not always the best thing, because, people watch your stuff and they're like, is that me? Like, you named that character after me. Is that supposed to be me?
Right.
And you're like, yeah.
Did you have to have conversations with people afterwards, after they saw the play and said, is this how you really think of me, or?
It happened with my mom in this. She was like, am I really a bad mother? Do you think I'm a bad mother? And I was like, yeah.
And after you told her that, how did it go with your relationship afterwards?
Oh, it was fine. It was good. As a director, you got to let actors know where they stand, just right off the bat.
Because of your parents, for people who don't know her, your father is David Mamet, your mother is Rebecca Pidgeon. These are accomplished artists in their own right. When you were starting out, did you feel any pressure to emulate either of them, or did you feel like I'm going to do my own thing and carve out my own space?
Definitely more of that one. I was also a teenager until very recently, so I was like, fuck you, Mom, Dad. I'm going to do my own thing. Glenn Ross.
And how did they respond to that?
Oh, they're very supportive. They're good people. I like them. I feel very lucky to have those parents in particular.
When you were going to 2-Bit Waltz, the initial idea, my understanding is that this is also autobiographical for you. Was the initial inspiration the idea of a young woman who doesn't want to go to college, who doesn't want to go down sort of a conventional path? Or what was sort of the origin when you first started writing the project?
Yeah, it all kind of just sprung up from necessity. I was like, I need to make a movie and I need to make it really quick. What can I write about? And my mom was like, write about yourself. And I was like, excellent idea. And then I did, because it didn't take me very long. And some of the scenes, like all of the grass stuff came by completely accidentally. Like those were all real scenes. Those weren't like fantastical, just nothing scenes. They were like actual like reality things. But we didn't have the budget for those locations. So I was like, we'll just put them in a field and make it really weird, and hopefully people won't ask too many questions. That's kind of how we did this movie.
When you were writing, I'm assuming the whole time you were going to always star in it. You never thought of anybody else to play this character.
No, I did, but the more people were like, you definitely can't do that. I was like, I'm definitely going to do it.
What, you definitely couldn't star in it? People were telling you that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody told me that. The producer and like even, just PAs would just come up to me and be like, you can't do this. Like in the middle of shooting. I'd be like, watch me. I don't think it went that far, but I liked the challenge, certainly. I never thought of anyone else. No, that was your question. I never thought of anyone else.
Because, obviously it's a very ambitious thing, not just to write it and star in it and direct it as well. Had you done much directing beforehand, plays, shows, anything? Or was this sort of the first big jump in?
Yeah, it was the first big jump in, I think. You know what's funny that I'm just remembering now? I actually wrote this movie for somebody else to direct. I wrote it for my friend Juliet to direct. And Juliet, God love her, is crazy. I got a call from her recently that was like, I'm in prison. I was like, cool. So she obviously, it didn't work out because she was doing other things. She was busy. So I was like, I guess I'll just do this.
It rarely happens.
That's literally what happened. This just came back to me right now. It's so weird.
So your father's written a book on directing. Was that an inspiration in terms, did you read on directing? Did you read his book? Did you talk to him about the process? I mean, obviously you've been working on The Neighbors and other things by that point, but.
I read on directing film right after I finished Two-Bit. And I was like, I should have done it that way. No, I really like that book a lot. And he was very helpful, but in a much more supportive way than in an advice-y way, I think. He was very helpful just in terms of, I think we have our minds sort of work similarly, and I'm not a very visual person at all. So when I plays was easy because it was just all words. And staging something is different than shooting it. So it was kind of weird to make that shift, but he helped me along.
And then in terms of choosing a cinematographer for this, you're talking about being more visual. In terms of working with that person, how did that sort of collaboration begin? How did you find the person that you shot this with?
Mac Fiskin, the cinematographer, went to SC, and Eric Fleischman, the producer of Two-Bit Waltz, just hired all of his friends from USC. So that's how I found Mac. But it turned out to be great. Mac was really helpful. Mac, I wrote the whole shot list and then came in and was like, okay, now we're going to go through it together. But he gave me, very helpful tips. Like, there's no such thing as a dolly that can go both sideways and forward and backward. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm going to rethink that now. But that's, it's good to know. Because how would you know? That was the scary part. Because it's like, I don't even know what I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I'm so impressed, because not having directed anything before, it's just, you just kind of dive into this and sort of, I'm curious, did you have a rehearsal process with your actors before the shoot? Did you talk to them and do table reads and like that? Or was it just really kind of on the set working these things out?
It's interesting. I really wanted to prepare with all of them. And I rehearsed with John a lot because John's always around. And I rehearsed with my mom a lot because I lived with her at the time. But the other people in the movie, I just kind of had to go with it. They were all flying in like the day before.
Yeah.
And I, had a hunch that it would be fine. And then it was. Right, John? Hi, Muffin. You showed up. That's John Piricello, you guys. Wasn't he great? Yay! You see what I mean? He's always around. Always.
In terms of that casting process, because you knew the woman who would play the mother character pretty well, was she the first person that came on board, or how did the casting process of who you got, how did that work out?
No, man, I just couldn't get anybody else. It's like, nightmare. It was great. She's actually kind of just amazing in that she's so technically minded, and she's just always knows her lines, and she's like a wizard at ADR, and she's entirely continuous. Like every editor that's ever worked with her says she does the same thing in every shot, while still being amazing and beautiful. She's not here, is she? Okay, just for the record.
But we are recording this, so she will be able to see this later.
Yeah,
yes.
Good. Yeah, that's how I think I always wanted her to play the mom.
You said you had this conversation with your mother afterwards about, do you really see me this way? While writing the character, did you actually think of your mother, or more of a combination of her and other mothers that you know? How did that work in terms of writing it?
The whole family is just kind of a caricature of my family, I think. We're all just like a little bit less interesting than that. It's my ideal of us. So yeah, I wrote it for her.
And then when you were writing drafts of this, did you show it to people? Are you someone when you're writing something you have friends look at, or do you sort of just trust your own counsel in terms of what you're coming up with and whether things are working or not?
I have friends look at it, but if they don't like it, then I break up with them. That's like how it goes. I'm like, just tell me what you think. And they're like, I hate it. And I'm like, well, I hate you. And then I just never talk to them again. So I don't take criticism. I literally just like physically reject criticism, but I crave it also. So I show it to people, but just hoping that they'll tell me that I'm a genius. Normally they don't. I don't have a lot of friends. He thinks I'm funny.
See, now I'm very nervous now. I'm going to be very positive this whole time. In terms of the idea, though, in terms of writing it, was the initial idea about this young woman who doesn't want to go to college, gets this will, basically? I'm curious of how it sort of started for you. Was it really the idea of who this woman is and sort of grew from there, or how was that kind of first seed of it? I know your mother said, write what you know, write about yourself, but how did that sort of develop?
I don't know. Are you asking me how I get my ideas?
Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where those come from. It's kind of a mystery. I think that's probably just how I was feeling at the time. I was probably just really caught up in myself at the time and decided to write about it. It's kind of just like a diary, but like a little bit more expensive.
With this type of film for a first-time filmmaker, a lot of times a first-time filmmaker will have movies in mind or filmmakers in mind in terms of models that they'd like to sort of emulate. I'm curious for you if you were that type of first-time filmmaker, or you didn't want to necessarily have models of what you were trying to create.
I didn't really have a thing. I've heard one thing over and over since, but like at the time I didn't really have a person that I really wanted to be. But I can see how some of those influences came out now. Hindsight.
The one that you hear over and over again, is it a movie or is it a filmmaker that you hear?
It's a filmmaker.
Oh, okay. Out of curiosity, is it Wes Anderson?
Yeah.
The reason why I ask is because, even in the press notes and the publicity for it, they mentioned Rushmore as sort of a thing. So I was, of course, curious if that was in any way something that you thought about in terms of making the film, or just after the fact people came to you and said, oh, this reminds me of a Wes Anderson film in certain ways.
I know, I kind of want to like fight him or something.
Why
tape it? No? Okay, whatever.
Well, because I can imagine
Not a
that,
big deal.
Whether it's any artist of any kind, whether it's a musician or a filmmaker, any kind of artist, it's sometimes flattering to be compared to other people. It can also be a little frustrating because you'd like to be your own person and not be compared to somebody else. I was curious about when you started getting that, how that.
Sure. I mean, I am a huge Wes Anderson fan, so I feel lucky that it's that and not. I can't think of anyone right now, but lucky that it's not somebody else. That's kind of people, and hopefully, as I do it more, I will develop more of my own, whatever, special uniqueness.
And you have been on sets since you were very young. You were in a couple of your father's films, but also in Kelly Reichert's most recent film, Night Moves. You're in that. You're in The Neighbors. Being around film sets from an early age, were you someone who sort of paid attention in terms of how camera setups and how directors work? Or is that something that over time you started to kind of notice?
I've never taken any experience like that away from set. On my dad's sets, it was always just, magical, and I just kind of took in the ambiance. And then when I worked on The Neighbors, I was just like, it was great. That was a great time. It was a great day job. And just everything job. It was a great job. But I was always asleep. I was always asleep or like reading. I was so tired and a little shitty teenager. Everyone was very good to me. But no, I never paid attention to camera setups or anything. Yeah, it's something you kind of have to learn for yourself, I think, if you really get in. Because, from afar, you're like, and if you're not in the movie industry and you pass a set, you're like, what the fuck are these people doing? Yeah. There's like all these carts full of tape, and like you're just like, what is going on over here? And like even when you're around it and you're just an actor, not just an actor. Even when you're around it and you're acting, I don't think you really pick it up as much.
Because it's interesting, because I always feel like when actors who've been established for 20, 25 years and they make their first film, they always say, I was always paying attention on sets, and I was so interested in what the director was doing and asking a bunch of questions and things like that. And I always do wonder if that's really the case, or they're just saying that to sort of show off how confident they were to make their first feature.
No, I was always like flirting with grips and stuff. Just being like gross teenager.
Well, because the PAs were being so mean to you, apparently, and saying, why are you,
I was actually a PA on my dad's movie the summer before I left high school, and that was so much fun. I loved being a PA. That, I think, taught me more than anything how things go down.
Was it the amount of just sort of moving around and doing a lot of sort of odds and ends jobs on a set and sort of seeing kind of the nuts and bolts, like you said, like sort of like the what the hell of how a movie actually gets made?
Exactly. Well, it's sort of like what makes a well-oiled machine. And then you find out that it's just like really tired young people that do it, that make it work, make it happen. You kind of like begin to appreciate like what goes behind, like, oh, so-and-so, can I have a cup of coffee? Because, from the other end of that spectrum, it's like, fuck, like, get him a cup of coffee right now. Do it. And you're just like, fuck, okay. Yeah. And so then when you're on the other end of that, and you're like, I don't even want a cup of coffee. I just like said that to say that to someone. You kind of feel bad.
Directing yourself, how easy is that for you in terms of gauging your own performance in this movie? Was it easier when you weren't in scenes? I mean, you're basically in every scene in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
How was that?
Bet your boots I am. Am I in every scene? I guess I am. Yeah. It was fine. I think it probably slows things down a little, just in terms of like literally watching playback. But no, I like being a director. I think it's cool.
And in terms of if we knew you outside of this room, how close is this final version of this character to you?
It's probably closer to me then than it is now. I do have a different haircut. And color. Yeah, probably a little closer to me then. Probably a little more unstable now.
A little more unstable now?
Sure, yeah.
Because since you haven't watched it in a while, I was curious about that. If it's, in some ways, if the movie feels like a younger, different version of you as opposed to the person that you are now? Now that you've made a film and started promoting it and talking about it, and
Well, yeah, I think it feels that way, not even because it's really about me. The movie could be about anything, but in terms of the style of it and like what I was into then, it's very indicative of just how it's made, not even the story. I think, when I do it again, hopefully, it'll be different.
And being as young as you are and working with really experienced actors, is there any sense of pressure about your first-time filmmaker in terms of giving notes to the actors in this film, or did you not worry about that?
I'm very of my dad's school of thought when it comes to actors. I don't really give them a lot of direction. I just hire good ones, or try to. So I didn't I didn't give anyone direction. So I didn't feel, unless it's like stand over there, and then I say that to them. And they complied. They're lovely.
Because some of these actors have worked with your father, did you know these actors well before shooting, or was it them flying in and you getting to know them on set?
I didn't know Bill Macy very well because he and my dad, were kind of like, they are still very bro-y. They love each other very much. But, they were like a couple of kids when they were like really hanging tough. So I was not in the picture yet. And I just wrote him an email. It was like Thanksgiving. And I said like, please. And he was like, yeah, which was awesome. And I knew David Paymer a little bit better. But they're both great, They're taking it easy.
And one of my favorite parts of this movie is actually Jared Gilman, who is so great.
Me too.
He's so great in Moonrise Kingdom. And, when you see young actors like that, you always hope that if they want to keep acting, that they'll find good roles. And you found him a good role. That process, did you know him beforehand, or how did he come into the picture?
It was just kind of a fortuitous experience. I sent my agent the script, and he was like, I actually represent Jared Gilman. And I was like, who? And he was like, the kid in Moonrise Kingdom. And I was like, amazing. And then I Skyped with him. And I was like, do you want to do this movie? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, great. He's kind of a weird kid, but he's wonderful. And yeah, he's my favorite part of the movie. He's exactly like that. The person he is in the movie is what he's like in real life. It's a joy to see. He never clips his fingernails.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, they're really beautiful. They're like very strong.
He didn't interpret that as part of his character. That's just a thing that he does normally.
I don't know. I don't know that he knew that he was acting. He's like very natural, Always very laid back. I like it. I admire it.
Well, just from the sense of us talking, it seems like that you encourage people to sort of be, as opposed to giving them a bunch of direction, just let these actors be themselves and sort of do what it is that they do. I'm apparently from the script that was clear enough. They knew what they were.
I'm probably putting that on a little bit. I very much, in some ways, yes, but in other ways, I'm like really stick to the script, and I'm like really kind of intense about the shot list and like how it's going to go, and a little bit of a perfectionist in terms of, I don't know, costumes. It's definitely not a free-for-all, but it kind of is.
Well, it's interesting because you don't get the sense by watching it. There's a preciseness to it. You don't feel like, oh, this was 45% improv. This seems like
it was not.
Yeah, there's much more sticking to the lines and being very specific about lines. In terms of like line readings or anything like that, did you talk with the actors about who these characters are? Did you have discussions beforehand at all about who this family is, what they're about?
No, I told them to talk fast and just hit their marks. And for the most part, they did it. There was a little bit of improvisation, actually, but not really within this. The breakfast scene, the first breakfast scene where I'm drinking something, I wrote that scene. We had like 20 minutes left before we broke for lunch. And the editor had come to me that day and been like, you don't have enough footage to finish this movie. Like, it's going to be a short if you don't do something quick. And I was like, okay. So I wrote that scene, and we did it in 20 minutes. That was the first and only take of that scene.
How long was the script?
Oh, like, no. It might have been 100 pages, but everyone's talking like a robot.
Uh-huh.
So it went quick. And I also, I don't really cut a lot. I like oneers a lot. So that, I think, also shortens the time of the film.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I was curious about, because you had written plays before this, if you still thought in a staged sort of theatrical way, as opposed to worrying about cuts, letting the actors kind of breathe in their performances and not worry about chopping them up in terms of editing.
Well, my love of sort of long one-shot scenes kind of stems from that. That also sort of feels like cheating, because you don't have to worry about how you're going to cut the scene together. And that's kind of why I ended up composing a lot of the shots the way I did. But it was fun, because then you get to feel all accomplished. You're like, yeah, that shot was 2 minutes long, and like the camera was moving. It was crazy. Yeah, so that's why I think it just feels easier.
And when you're finished shooting, when you're done, did you feel pretty confident about what you had completed? There's always a bit of a nervousness in terms of, now let's see what the first cut is, let's see how this looks. I mean, how did you feel after you'd shot this?
Terrible. Terrible, just awful. You get into the cutting room and you're like, what did I do? Because it's weird. It feels very different when you're on set. And then when you're watching it and you're a little more removed, it feels weird. But I think it turned out like what it was supposed to be. I think it just took some finessing, as things do. My dad, or maybe not my dad always says that someone always says that you write the movie 3 times. You write it when you write it, and then when you shoot it, and then when you edit it. Because that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like a rewrite, which is never very fun.
I was reading, I think, somewhere that you were talking about the rewriting processes in general. They don't like it even on the script process. Did this go through a lot of drafts, or?
So many. We ran out of things to call the draft. You know how it's like cherry 1 and like blue 2 revised. We like went through the color spectrum twice. It's just like writing and additional scenes and crazy. It was not very organized. I do a lot of rewriting.
And what was the sort of the course or the path that those rewrites took? Was it beefing up certain characters or beefing up relationships or bringing more of the therapist into the film? How did that sort of evolve?
Just changes that I thought were innate of the story. I can't even remember. I think the original title to this movie was called Getting Fat and Dying in New York, and the girl in it, she had an affair with some like gun store owner, and they were like gonna run away to get, right, Johnny? John read it. And John's part was a lot bigger. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Stay strong. So yeah, things evolve, I suppose. That's probably one of my biggest weaknesses, is that I work very fast, but then what I read is generally not very usable.
Well, I think in terms of writing, though, what's encouraging about that is knowing, okay, get it down on the paper, and then you can fix it, you can revise it from there. At least, once you have something down, you have something that you can work with.
That's interesting that you say that. My dad said another brilliant thing that I'm going to steal from him so he can't use it in an interview. He said that initial writing is like taking a shit, because it's like kind of like cathartic, and then it's there on the page, and then rewriting is like playing with your shit. That's what it feels like. And I was like, that's very wise, Daddy.
Because this film is autobiographical, because some people, when they write autobiographical work, there is a working through or something cathartic for the artist. I'm curious, for you, writing it, making it, did you feel like you got something out of it sort of emotionally or personally? Did you feel like you exercised some demons by writing about this?
I felt closer to gaining a skill, certainly. Being able to make a movie is a skill. So yeah, personally, it was a good feeling. I felt like I accomplished something and learned a little bit more about what it is that I'm trying to do as my career. So yeah, I felt like I grew. But in terms of like the story, getting my emotions out, I don't know that really, I guess maybe there was like an element of revenge in there somewhere. To just like say all the things I never said. But I don't know. It's not really that sad of a movie.
Well, I see. If that was the case, it comes through in the humor, I feel like. Like you're getting laughs out of the painful things I think people kind of go through in terms of what am I going to do with my life and finding yourself and all of that. It's not sad. It's more kind of cathartic and funny, I feel like, is the way it comes out in this movie.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Since John is here, in terms of the relationship, in terms of your character and the therapist, how did that develop? How did that work? And the two of you sort of working together as actors. Can you talk a little bit about that? You clearly know each other before the film, so what was that process?
Yeah, John is my friend. He is a great friend of the family. We actually met him because my little brother and his son are best friends. And John has always been kind of like Uncle John. So I kind of wrote him the role because he is kind of, the advice giver. He's quick to call me on my bullshit. So it was easy. It was just like hanging out. Although he was kind of a stress case when we were shooting. But he got over it eventually.
How so? Why was he a stress case?
I don't know. Too much cocaine. Oh, did we? It was 2 days. It was not one. Okay, so we shot all those therapist scenes in one day. So I was a little stressed out too, I guess. Thank you. Yeah, we shot that at my actual lawyer's office in a broom closet. And there was no air conditioning, and it was a working office. We were like literally down the hall. I don't know why they let us shoot there. It's such a stupid idea on their part, but I'm really thankful that they did it.
And overall, how long of a shoot are we talking?
15 days.
You seem calm about that now. When you knew going in 15 days, how stressed were you about that?
No, it was kind of great because I didn't know what to expect at all. I didn't know how long it took to shoot a movie or what it took to shoot a movie or whatever. They said 15 days, and I was like, great, that sounds right. Sure.
And you talked about doing more films. Have you written things since this?
Yeah, I got like 5 under my belt. We'll see what happens.
Do they go through a whole range of genres? Are they comedies like this?
Yeah, most of them are kind of supposed to be vaguely funny. But, they're different. One of them's a sci-fi movie, and one of them is not. And the other 3, I don't really know. More just like stream of consciousness. We'll see which one gets picked up first.
In terms of writing...
The producer was like, do you want to do a 2-bit Waltz 2? I was like, you're such a fucking producer.
Well, there are some loose ends at the end of this movie, so there is sequel possibility if you want to go that direction.
Yeah, I don't know.
In terms of
I don't
writing...
think it's that bad yet.
In terms of writing comedy, is that something that you find easy to do? Do you enjoy it? Is comedy difficult for you to write?
No, I think it's probably the easiest. I feel like doing drama is like much more of a serious thing. I use humor as a way to deflect my problems. So I have that. That's my issue. So most things that I write are like supposed to be funny.
We have a couple questions from the audience. I'll make sure we get to them.
Let's do it.
The first one is, what inspires you most as a filmmaker?
Jealousy.
Would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sort of. I think that if I weren't like a petty, jealous person, I probably would just be like a really lazy stoner. But because I am, people come out with things, and I'm like, they can fucking I can make a movie better than that. So that's like literally what keeps me going. That's why I work sometimes. So jealousy. And also other filmmakers' work is beautiful, and I'm inspired by movies as well.
But I actually think that's really refreshing. That in fact, because I think a lot of early starting out filmmakers look at other people's films and go, well, if that gets made,
Exactly.
I could do that.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I could do something better than that. Yeah. So I think it's actually refreshing to actually hear you sort of own up to, I think, what a lot of filmmakers feel, is they see other things out there in the world and think, I could do something better than that.
Yeah. Right.
The second question is, what is the best advice you have ever received as an artist and filmmaker?
It's probably from my dad. And it was probably something severe. Let me think about it. Probably that all writing is rewriting, and that if I wasn't willing to rewrite a script, then I was never going to be the real deal, because writing is work. I think that's a fair assumption, because the hardest part for me about about making a movie, even though I've only made one, is writing the script. Because, that's the whole blueprint. That's the thing you pull out of thin air. It's not the movie, it's the script. So, just to be able to humble yourself enough to say, no, I need to work on this again. Yeah.
And in terms of yourself as an actor, so you are on The Neighbors, you star in this film. Do you feel like, as an actor, that you have a certain type of style, a certain type of approach to the work that you do, beyond just the writing, but as actually as an actor and a performer in that way? How do you approach that as an actor?
A certain style. I don't know. I just try to say the lines in a believable way. That's how I roll. And see if it works or not. Yeah. Acting's fun.
Because in this film, it definitely seems like you don't worry about overselling the humor through the performance, that you're a little more understated and letting the lines do the work in terms of dramatic or comedic effect. You don't worry about...
Yeah, and definitely not a ham, or I try not to be a ham. And sometimes people are like, can you act at all, or you just like... And I'm like, I don't know. It's just how I decided to say the line. Yeah, I can sometimes just veer off in the other direction. I definitely, acting definitely takes work as well, to find the truth in the scene.
And is that something that you're able to... Are you comfortable in front of a camera at this point, or do you still feel like a little bit of anxiety when you're going up there and you're doing your own project and the whole thing is kind of built around you? Did you feel nervousness about not just writing and directing, but also kind of carrying the film in a way?
I didn't really have time to think about it. I was kind of focused on getting everybody home early. Always. That was like always my thing. We were always out an hour early. So, I just wanted to do it as quickly and efficiently as I could. In a way, I really liked being the star just because I knew what I wanted. So it was easy. I didn't have to talk to myself about anything.
Well, Clara, congratulations on the film.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys. Thanks
Thank
for
you very
coming.
much.